Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a massive historical misconception about one of the absolute legends of 20th century music. We're going to uncover the hidden roots of a true master, and honestly, it might just change how you view his entire legacy. So, when you hear the name Béla Bartók, what comes to mind? For most of the world, he's the quintessential world-famous Hungarian composer, right? He's this towering cultural icon, celebrated globally for avant-garde masterpieces like music for strings, percussion, and celesta, and of course, the iconic piano collection Microcosmos. I mean, if you open up almost any standard history book today, you'll see his genius labeled as strictly, purely Hungarian. It's treated as an undisputed fact, or, well, so we thought. But that brings us to a fundamental question. Is Hungarian music actually his true root? What if the absolute bedrock of his inspiration, the very foundation of his musical genius, wasn't actually Hungarian at all? Well, we actually don't have to guess, because Bartók told us himself. Back in 1923, he literally wrote, "I might say that Slovak music was my first musical mother tongue." Wow, that is a stunning admission. Straight from the composer's own pen, it completely shatters the established belief of him as a strictly Hungarian figure. Okay, let's dive into this. To uncover his true origins, we're going to look at 1. The myth of the Hungarian composer. 2. The first musical mother tongue. 3. The phonograph and thousands of recordings. 4. The DNA of his music. And finally, 5. The Carpathian genius of Europe. Section 1. The myth of the Hungarian composer. Let's start peeling back the layers of his totally unexpected early life. You see, despite his massive fame later on in Budapest, Bartók's beginnings were incredibly diverse. He was actually born in Sănicălu Mare, which is a town in present-day Romania. His father, who was Romanian, sadly passed away shortly after he was born. So he was raised by his mother, who was Slovak. They eventually moved to Bratislava, and Bartók grew up completely immersed in a Slovak-speaking environment. Right from the get-go, the purely Hungarian narrative gets pretty complicated, doesn't it? And get this, even the origin of his own name holds a really fascinating clue. The Hungarian word Bartók is actually a distorted pronunciation of the Slavic word brytok, which translates to a bee's nest in a birch tree. On top of that, historians note his paternal ancestors had long-standing roots in Slovakia. So physically, linguistically, and literally in his namesake, his roots are deeply embedded in Central Europe, well outside the purely Hungarian sphere. Moving on to Section 2, the first musical mother tongue. Let's look at why he felt such a powerful emotional connection to this specific culture. Going back to that incredible 1923 quote, we can see exactly why he felt this way. His very first musical impressions as a child were actually Slovak songs that his mother played for him on the piano. So when he calls it his mother tongue, he means that quite literally. It was the emotional and auditory foundation of his entire life. Long before he ever wrote a single note of his own, it was this specific music that shaped his childhood sensitivity and his ear for melody. Section 3, the phonograph and thousands of recordings. This is where he shifts from a child listener to an objective field researcher. Now, what's really interesting about this data is what happened around 1905. Bartók started traveling around with an early phonograph to objectively record regional folk music, and the numbers are absolutely shocking. He recorded over 3,500 Romanian songs and over 3,200 Slovak songs. But his Hungarian recordings? Just over 2,700. His Slovak recordings vastly outnumbered his Hungarian ones. Through this grueling scientific fieldwork, he even realized that a lot of so-called Hungarian folk songs weren't actually part of the original folklore at all. I mean, compiling over 3,200 Slovak folk songs is a staggering achievement. This massive collection completely proves that Slovak music formed the largest corpus of his foundational research material, right after Romanian. In his personal letters, he even described Slovak music as the purest and closest to his heart. He wasn't just casually interested here, he was meticulously cataloging the very bedrock of his artistic inspiration, even taking the time to correct spelling mistakes in the Slavic language along the way. Section 4, the DNA of his music. Let's break down the technical magic and show exactly where this Slovak influence lives inside his famous compositions. Let's start with the melody. If we contrast the typical Hungarian label with his actual compositional style, a totally different picture emerges. His smooth diatonic melodies, meaning they mostly use natural step-by-step movements without those large, jarring leaps, were directly modeled after natural Slovak speech intonation.
This natural, spoken, lyrical quality is the absolute core of his famous melodic style.
And then there's the rhythm. When you listen to Bartók, you often hear this raw, earthy, primal pulsation, right? Well, that drive comes straight from asymmetrical Slovak dance structures, like the odzimok or karichka. Just imagine clapping a beat of 3, then 2, then 2. It's uneven, it's driving, and it's incredibly revolutionary. These are the exact rhythmic patterns that gave his music its famous dynamic pulse. Finally, let's talk about harmony. Bartók completely revolutionized modern music by building this complex polymodal language. But the secret ingredients for this brilliant new language were actually quite ancient. The Dorian, Mixolydian, and pentatonic scales found deeply embedded in old Slovak peasant songs. He literally took those ancient earthy sounds and expanded them into something brilliantly modern. And this brilliantly illustrates how those theoretical elements, the melody, the rhythm, and the modality, actually manifest in reality. We aren't just hearing abstract modernism here, we're hearing the stylized, brilliant evolution of Slovak folk traditions playing out right in front of our ears. The undeniable proof of this Slovak foundation is woven directly into his world-famous masterpieces. You can hear it in the Cycle for Children, throughout the iconic pieces of Microcosmos, in the fierce rhythmic drive of his string quartet No. 3, and right within the complex dance structures of his piano sonata. Even his collection of 44 violin duets heavily relies on stylized Slovak tunes. Honestly, the evidence is simply undeniable. Section 5. The Carpathian Genius of Europe. It's time to completely reframe his historical legacy based on all the evidence we've just seen. Based on the overwhelming evidence from his own intimate letters, to his objective field recordings, to the very notes printed on his scores, modern musicology has completely shifted its view. We really can no longer see him merely as a strictly Hungarian figure. Instead, Béla Bartók is a true Carpathian composer. He is this magnificent product of a deeply multi-ethnic Central Europe, where Hungarian was just one component, but Slovak, Romanian, and South Slavic influences fundamentally forged his mature genius. So, the crucial takeaway here is this. His emotional sensitivity, his melodic style, his revolutionary rhythmic bass, and his harmonic expansions all trace back to that one primary layer. The unavoidable truth is that without Slovak music, Béla Bartók simply wouldn't be Béla Bartók. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. How does this change our perception of national composers? When we rigidly label historical geniuses with modern national borders, what incredible, diverse roots are we erasing? Keep that in mind the next time you listen to a so-called national masterpiece. Thank you for joining us, and keep questioning the history you think you know.